going to explain a little bit about what I
All
do
right.
and why I got into this.
Okay. Okay. And Mr. Albert is now. Well, let me start. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Will Horton. This is the NLP forum. We do this weekly. We talk about different topics, and sometimes we have group discussions. Those of you that are in hypnosis, NLP coaches, therapists, things like that. Anyway, I just lost track of my thoughts. Sorry about that. So we do this every week, and I'm trying to bring on more people to talk about things that they're experts in. I don't claim to be the expert in anything or everything, one or two little things. So anyway, that's what it is. So today we're bringing on Dr. Albert Vermonte. He's someone I've known for several years now. He's a hypnotist, an NLPer. He's also a hypnosis teacher and an NLP teacher. He's also a theatrical agent, been doing that for a long, long time. And he works with actors, as I call performing artists, actors, singers, dancers, things like that. I know he mostly works with actors, but the genre is all the same. But here's Mr. Albert. I'm making him the host, so he has control. And there we go.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Will. Hello, everybody. As you know, my name is Dr. Albert Vermonte. I've been a theatrical agent since 2007. I've been I work pretty much with actors in the New York City market. And the reason why I became interested in working with actors, not just in a employment capacity, but also sort of in a more general coaching area, is how important the mental and emotional state is and how crucial it is for success as a performing artist. And this talk, this kind of discussion can not just only apply just to actors, but it can also apply to athletes, singers, dancers, even people that work in sales to a degree, because it's the same principle where you're putting yourself out there every day and you're putting yourself sort of on the line and making yourself vulnerable every day. So this applies, I think, to not just for actors, but for a lot of different professions. And for those of you that are, hypnotists and NLPers on this call, there's a good chance you're going to see these people in your practice, especially if you're in a metropolitan area. So I want to now share. Let me share my screen. Now, I just so you know, I do use PowerPoint, but I'm kind of very brief, so my slides are very, very limited, and I do that because simply I like to just kind of talk off the cuff and not necessarily read. So, all right. So, title of my talk is Hypnosis NLP for Performers. Now, I have my contact information here. I'm albert.vermonte at Gmail. You can find me on Albert on Facebook. You can, very easy to find me if you need to get a hold of me. So I noticed when I was starting out as an agent, as a junior agent, a young agent, I was meeting a lot of actors that were telling me how hungry they were and how ambitious they were and how much they wanted to work. Yet what I couldn't figure out in my head was why so many of them were having a hard time getting work. And when they got the work or they got the auditions, why I was noticing that some of them were no showing, being unprofessional, not preparing, or even just flat out turning down auditions. One notorious case was I have had this actor on my roster. This is like 2007. She got a big audition for a series regular. and for a major show, called me an hour before the audition, telling me I'm not going. And then I got an email the next day saying that she's quitting the business completely. Never heard from her again. So, and as frustrating it was for me, because that hurts, my reputation, with casting directors. So I started focusing on, like, what's happening here? Why am I seeing, and then for those of you in that field, why am I seeing cognitive dissonance happening here? Where it's like, okay, you want to work, but yet you're showing me resistance. So I switched gears, and that's where my topic of my doctoral thesis and doctoral dissertation in 2015 was working on fear, success, and self-handicapping behavior in performing artists, because I see this all the time. And the actors on this call probably seen this with your peers about how a lot of actors just shoot themselves in the foot before they even get started. I mean, this is a tough field. So let me walk you through sort of what it's like to be an actor. Um, and feel free on the chat if anybody is on here wants to put any comments in. As an actor, you're putting yourself out there every day. There's no guarantee of employment. You're constantly making yourself vulnerable every day by auditioning, and you're only really as good as your last audition. So in a sense, there's a lot of pressure, and there's very little stability. And not only that, but usually, and probably most actors can back me up on this, their families are not really entirely supportive of them entering the arts. And if they are somewhat supportive, they don't really understand the business. So very often, there's that disconnect. Whereas, well, I wanted to be the doctor. Well, no, I'm an actor. So they sometimes will get either excommunicated, or family situation can be very tense. So they're dealing with that. In addition to, not knowing each day if they're going to get work. So there's an immense pressure there anytime you deal with anybody in the performing arts industry. So that's something to understand when you're working with them, is that there's no stability in this profession. Unless you're, at the level of Steve Buscemi, or like Christopher Walken, your level of stability is sort of like day-to-day flexibility. So going back into things, I'd like to talk a little bit about language use, because NLP, a lot of it is all about language and the language you use on a daily basis and the language we talk to ourselves with. So the one thing that really I want to say for actors is, in your daily vocabulary, how you describe yourself is extremely important. And any hypnotist or coach on this call know how important our wording is, our internal wording is. So, for example, do not use the word "I'm an aspiring actor," because what does that mean? Well, if you say you're aspiring, that means A, you're not really there yet, and so what I often say is use your working actor or your professional actor. Because the moment you do a job, even if it's non-paid, if you do a job where it's a short film, an independent film, a stage production that you were hired for, you are working. So you're not aspiring, you're an actor. And also be very careful about the use of the term, I'm a starving artist, I'm struggling artist. I hear that a lot. I get a lot of submissions for actors for representation, that, or want to work with me, and I'll get that language in their email. I'm a struggling artist, or I'm a starving artist, I'm an aspiring actor, and it just automatically, no, I want to correct them. you're a working actor, because the moment you use those terms to ourselves, you're setting your conscious mind. So yeah, well, I'm going to go into that. Robin. So there's, a couple of things with language that's important. When we use our language, we're communicating with two minds, as we know in hypnosis and NLP. We have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Now, this is going to get, I'm going to geek out a little bit with psychology here, but our subconscious mind dominates majority of our day-to-day interaction, our day-to-day personality, and our day-to-day functioning. So if you're automatically putting language that's holding yourself down, which is by saying you're a starving artist or an out of work actor, whatever that is, what's happening here is you're setting yourself up for potentially failure. I mean, you have so much already stacked against you, sort of. So why use yourself? Add that. Why are you adding that? Your own self handicapping and self doubt, or your own negative language there. So this is important to use. Yeah, exactly, because it's not only that. Will said that he used an email for an audition. He's a professional actor. That automatically, even if that imply the director likes that in itself, the fact that you keep saying that affirmation over and over again means that you're going to go into that room when it comes to an audition and knock it out of the park and do the best job you can possibly do. And so, when we work with NLP and hypnosis for actors, we're not, I'm not an acting teacher, so it's not, what we can do for hypnosis and NLP is it'll make you mentally on top of your game. And you'd be surprised how far that will take people just to be mentally on top of their game. While they're going, well, I recommend you go get acting training and train a technique and work, with a regular acting coach or teacher. But, clear out the mental clutter. And you'd be surprised how far you'd go. And as Will knows, I teach part-time Thursday night an acting studio, working actor studio. And, a lot of the things we talk about is, we talk a little bit about the mental, and emotional stuff, but also the important thing is the reality of what's happening here. So I want to go into, um, you know, reframing is something we do a lot in NLP. It's kind of like reframing is just kind of like giving an alternative explanation more towards the positive. Um, there, I forget who said it, but there was a quote in an NLP book I read years ago saying that there's no such thing as rejection. And I forget how exactly the exact wording, but it was like, there's no such thing as rejection. It's just simply, you're not needed today. And I think as an actor, if you get that, that audition, you didn't get the part. Okay, that's just this one right now. So, you can audition for something later on today or tomorrow that you'll get. So, working sort of like, doing a 6-step reframe where you, break down the fear of rejection for an actor, or does a visual squash where you get out of that self-talk, or even doing like the fast phobia technique, which removes the fear of rejection. So, as we know, it's kind of like putting yourself in um, that mode of, when you work with an actor doing a fast phobia technique, it removes the fear of rejection. And again, if you take all the fears away, your power as a performer is going to dramatically improve, regardless of whether or not, the amount of training you have. Just your power and your essence is going to skyrocket. And so I feel like a good part of working with actors in, an NLP mode is more, or hypnosis mode is getting rid of those fears of rejection. You take that off the table and automatically you're more powerful as an actor. So I can get you the best, like I'm working with, if I was working with Michelle, on the call here, if she was an actress, it would be, I'd make her the best Michelle possible mentally, because I'd get rid of that rejection. I'd get rid of that clutter. Now, of course, Michelle would still be working with an acting teacher or coach to, improve her technique. But at the same time, I'm getting rid of I'm getting rid of the mental clutter. So there's a good part there that that's important here. So getting rid of rejection. Now, some other techniques I want to go into. A very powerful one is a circle of excellence, which, if you don't mind, I'd love to take you through a brief exercise for those on the call, especially the actors on the call. Take a minute, take a deep breath in, okay? And just take a deep breath in, get yourself comfortable. Okay, take a deep breath in and just close your eyes. And I want you to think of a time. So close your eyes, and I want you to think of a time in which it could be a recent performance, it could be a recent incident in your life where you felt the most successful. So just close your eyes, breathe that in, recall that experience. And as you recall that experience, remember what you were hearing, what you were seeing, and what you're feeling. And just let that marinate, that really successful, competent, confident feeling. You're on top of your game here. Even put a color to that. Add a color to that. And just really get into that experience. Feel what you're feeling, hear what you're hearing, see what you're seeing. You're really confident. This is a time in your life where you're the most confident. Remember that. So I'm going to be quiet for about 30 seconds, and I just want you to experience that. Okay. Now, I'd like you to take uh, your index finger and your thumb and make a circle. And this is going to be your circle of excellence. So anytime that you go before an audition or before a performance, I want you to make a circle with your forefinger and your thumb, and just recall this experience right before you do that. So every time you have an audition, make that circle and forefinger. So we circle with the forefinger and thumb, and just recall that positive experience. Get into it. Every time you do that, you'll get right into it. And just, open your eyes now. And that's a technique that you can use, very simple, on the fly. I also want to go into, and I didn't put on the slide here, but something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. So if anybody's familiar with acupuncture, we have different pressure points in the body, different meridian points. So it's going to be a little hard with the Zoom with it because I have a virtual background, but I'm just going to go into a brief tapping if you want to follow along. But you tap on different parts of the body. So, for example, you start off by tapping the middle of the forehead, and you could say something like, let's say you have this, I release this fear and let it go. I release this fear and let it go. And then you go to the side of the eye. I release this fear and let it go. And then under your eye, I release this fear and let it go. And then you tap the chest or collarbone. I release this fear and let it go. And then now take your left hand, okay, or whichever hand, and then, your right hand, and then take your left hand and put it on your wrist. And just think of the word peace. And close your eyes, take an inhale and exhale, and just say to yourself the word peace. Now, we're going to try it one more time, just what we just did. So tap the forehead. I release and let it go. And then tap the side of the eye. I release and let it go. And then under your eye, I release and let it go. Collarbone, I release and let it go. And then take the, your left hand over your right wrist. Close your eyes. Breathe and exhale the word peace. And you do that about, I'd say, 3 or 4 times. Now, you may want to do this in a bathroom. You may not want to do this in a waiting room, the audition, because people may not know what you're doing. And may think you might be, because people are not going to understand what you're doing. But that could be something you could do at home or even in the restroom. Just do a couple rounds of that, but also use the language of I release and let it go, because that's particularly important for audition anxiety. So, also now going back into a couple other things I want to talk about before we end, is there's something called in psychology called the Zagarnic Effect. The Zagarnic Effect is, a Russian, named after a Russian psychologist, and that kind of states that we often remember the failures or what we didn't complete more so than what we complete. So, very often we dwell on, especially actors, will dwell on auditions that might not have been their best. So, or their best performance. So one of the things that we work with actors, and, I'm sure actors on the call can recognize this, that when you have an audition and it's over, the important thing is to let it go. Because otherwise you sit and you focus, and you go back to your car or you go back on a subway and you start thinking, I could have did this, I could have did that better, I could have did that better. Why did I do this? Why did I say this? The answer to that is, let it go. Because you're always going to find things, especially if you're kind of like, a little critical, and a lot of actors are hard on themselves, is you're going to find stuff wrong if you think about it. You dwell on anything, you're going to find stuff that you did wrong or think that you did wrong. And I can't tell you how many times actors, in my experience of an agent, would call me up and say, I just blew that audition. And then, or I did really bad. And they're really upset. And then an hour later, I get a call that they booked the job. So it could be perhaps that maybe you thought you did bad, but you did, that's sometimes the worst critic. So, because we tend to remember things that are either incomplete versus how we don't, or versus things that we've done successfully. Just like in a real world, like let's say somebody gets, 20 compliments in one day, but yet at the same time they hear 1 or 2 critical or negative comments. What sticks with us sometimes the most is a negative, rather than the 20 positive that we just received. So also, one thing I really, another thing that NLP and hypnosis can get into is not just, it can also help with performance. And I heard this term used recently, post-traumatic stress. One thing that's very often talked about in the acting community is the effects that sometimes method acting can have. Because with method acting, you're connected to a character on a personal and deep level. And it can sometimes, when you connect with them, even if you're doing all the physicalities of that, like embodying the actor physically, you're often taking on the emotional aspects too. And sometimes you can get so lost in becoming taking on the emotional traits of your character that you can start to have breakdowns. Look at the tragic case of like Heath Ledger, for example. Um, he had, his recent, the most recent success before his tragic passing was being the Joker, being the Dark Knight, and he had to go to a lot of dark places to play that role. Now he played it very cinematically well for the viewers. I mean, everybody loved it, but did we really take a care and look at how's Heath doing? That was a tough place to get to. Also, there was, the reason why I bring this up also is because, um, exactly, Nicolas Cage never came back from leaving Las Vegas. There was a movie that Charlize Theron did that she won the Academy Award for 2004 called The Movie Monster, where she played Eileen Warmeth, the female serial killer, who was a real life character. She had, and I remember watching an interview with her. There were nights off of filming where she literally had to, when she cried her eyes out because of the character that she was playing. It got to her. Also, a little trivia: James Gandolfini, who played Tony Soprano, I think one of the greatest actors of the 21st century, who's no longer with us. But I was reading, that himself and his character were totally different people. Like he was, he did Tony Soprano so well, but there were times when he literally had to stop filming Tony Soprano and go into the bathroom and almost throw up because of the violence he was doing, because it made him sick to his stomach. The violence, even if it was fake, but still the idea of being a violent character repulsed him so much. So we have to remember that also working with actors is kind of like how to enter that state of that character, but also at the same time breaking that immediately. As soon as the word cut or the word once you get off stage, we need to be able to break you out of that character fast so that you don't take that on. Exactly. And as Annette said, very actors are, very sensitive, empathic, and that helps with the role. But it really, it takes a thing. And Gene Hackman, for example, would not play Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins, for example, who was brilliant as Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal, actually did not like that at all. They actually had to really talk him into doing the second follow-up because it took a lot out of him to do that. Because in order to really give a good performance, you have to really get into character. Last example I want to talk just briefly here is one of my favorite working actors that's really doing well today in the modern world. Unfortunately, I don't rep him. Is Vincent D'Onofrio. Now, I was talking to a couple of people who knew him, knows him well. He prepares very deeply for roles, and he will only take on roles that he feels sympathy or connection to the character. And He played, if anybody remembers an old movie with Jennifer Lopez called The Cell, where he played a very deranged serial killer for the role. This man, this actor, to prepare for that role, for 2 months before filming, isolated himself from his family, his wife and kids, went to a hotel room, spent 600 hours watching serial killer interviews of them talking about the grisly murders, and plastered his room in the hotel with crime scene photos and stared at them for hours. He needed counseling after that movie was over. Like, actually, he was going through post-traumatic stress. And that's why I call it kind of post-traumatic stress, because in a sense, with identifying with the character, we tend to get lost in there. So part of working with actors, I think, on a hypnosis and NLP thing, is getting them to break, working with them to break that character state immediately for their own mental health. And then finally, deep trance identification, which helps them identify with the character, but perhaps getting them to identify with the character to enough that, just for that take or just for that performance, and then get back out. So we have to do that. And I think that there's going to be a lot of time with entering and breaking state. Thank you. So I kind of I'm gonna stop screen share because that's pretty much, and I'd like to hear from some of the actors on this call too. So I'm gonna just stop the share now, and I'd love to open it up, for any questions, comments. Okay, Kathy Sweet has a comment.
There's nothing sweet about me, Albert. It's Kathy Sweat.
Right, okay.
But I proctor exams in a medical school, and there's official instructions that need to be read. But I always tell the students, I know that everyone who's there, chances are they did well in second grade on their spelling words. Just to have gone in the trajectory that now you're in medical school, you probably got those 10 spelling words correct every Friday. And so I said, remember that feeling when the teacher read the word and you were holding your pencil, your chubby pencil, and you knew how to spell it. And I said, remember that feeling and bring that feeling to yourself as you read each question now that you're in medical school. And it reminded me of what you said about thinking about a successful event.
Yeah, that's exactly, maybe you don't realize, but that's exactly what you're doing. You were using an NLP technique, neuro-linguistic programming, and getting them to put them in that state of being that. So it's the same principle of putting yourself, like when you go on that audition now, put yourself in that same state of you doing very well, or being very, feeling very accomplished, and you'd be surprised about how far that will take you, and that will get you out of your head. So
it's good to learn the name for that technique. Someone taught it to me a long time ago. Now I can learn more and hopefully help the students and myself.
That would be great. Yeah, no, totally. I'd recommend, going into and studying NLP or taking a course in NLP at some point.
Thank you for this lecture. I shared it in James Siccone's Actors Axiom student group and on the talent managers for actors, because I think it's very helpful to all of us.
Well, I'm glad you did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for this information.
No problem. All right. Anybody else? That's great information. Yeah, thank you, Maya. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. Feel free to anybody else want to add stuff. I think it's like to hear. Hey, Caroline.
Hi, Dr. Albert. Thank you. This is really wonderful. And as a non-actor, I had aspirations when I was very young, and I've talked a little about this before, but was steered away from it, did not have a supportive family. But now as a non-actor, as I practice NLP and I'm a hypnotist, and I've been asked to speak in 2 weeks, actually the morning after the election, to a business group in my area. And I believe, and I've always loved the circle of excellence. It's one of my favorite techniques. And I think it's a great way for those of us who are non-performers for speaking engagements. And a lot of the information that you gave us is just great for breaking that fear of public speaking and fear of being judged as the odd one, the weird one, because nobody really understands what we do. But that circle of excellence is really a great way to kind of integrate your audience and bring them in physically and mentally and emotionally to start a talk, you know, because everybody, no matter what field they're in, and it's a diverse group out there, has something in their life that they had a great success with. And so it brings out the passion, and then immediately, I think they relate to you really well. And so thank you for bringing that up and using Circle of Excellence again, because I was just thinking, I've been going through these exercises in my head. How do I want to start this and get everybody really interested really quickly? And I think I just found my answer.
Okay, thank you. Glad.
Dr. Albert, I think that you teaching the actors that there is no rejection. There's no such thing as rejection. It's just, hey, another day.
Yeah.
Just like, anything, like, just, it's okay. You're not, the word rejection, like you said, it's so important, your words. So I thought right away that happened to be the first thing that you taught us. And I think that's the first thing everyone should know, because that word is so damaging, rejection, when in fact, they're not rejecting you. It's just, So thank you for that.
Not personal. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's really not personal at all.
Yeah, Albert, real quick. I know I've heard you say it, and I heard this back when I went to the academy. An actor's job is auditioning. The parts are a perk.
I like that.
That you audition. Really quick. When you were talking about like the inner dialogue and how you quit saying like I'm a struggling actor or I'm aspiring or wannabe or something, I'm reminded of how, and I want you to talk about why it's so important for young actors to hang out with working actors. And you always see as an actor kind of moves up, they get a different group, and there's nothing wrong with that. People come into your life for a reason, a season generally, and then you get a different group. When I got serious about this about 7 or 8 years ago, I started taking professional acting classes, right? Because it's a different mindset, and that was fun. And so I want you to talk about that, the groups you hang out with, and the second thing. I'd been doing theater forever, and then finally I directed a show which changed how I looked at acting just from this viewpoint. I understood that like Elizabeth may be the best for the job, but I'm going to hire Maya because the actor is only 5'8" and Elizabeth's about 5'10". That's not going to work on stage, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that's happened to me. I think I'm a great guy for the part, but I remember I was going to play Nathan Detroit, but I didn't get the part because the lady he cast was damn near 6 foot tall, and unless I wear stilts, I'm not getting close to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but who you hang out with and whatever else you want to say, that's important. Modeling.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and that's a good point, because, this is why I say about it's not personal, about the rejection, because you could do a great, and the actors can back me up on this call. You could do a phenomenal, an excellent audition, but that doesn't mean you're going to get the role. There's so many factors outside of your control that will make that, that will make that determination. all your job as an actor is to give that great, to give a great audition. And also, as Dr. Will had indicated, a very good point is like you want to hang out with actors that are slightly doing better than you are at the moment, because you work hard at that. That's why, like, there's that popular saying with, show me, the 5 friends you hang out with, I can tell you about yourself, in a sense. So if you're hanging out as an actor with other out of work or non-working actors, you're going to find yourself the same way, sort of out of work and not working. Whereas if you start associating yourself with actors that are currently working, that's going to really impact the job you're going to do, and your success is going to be elevated. So I know Dr. Willie talk a lot about, just in general, about the crowd you hang out with, and that you should be hanging out with people that are better, or working, and it's just for anybody, that you want to pick successful people and start hanging out with them more and associating yourself more with them, because that point you're gonna work hard to keep up with them, or go down on the other hand, the other extreme with them. And Maya and Robin, in the chat here, one of the things we talk about with actors, going back to the, your job is to audition, there's this term that we call booking the room, which means getting the casting director to like you. Because the community, especially in whether you're in New York, Atlanta, Florida, and LA, the casting community is sort of small, in a sense. You'll often have multiple, casting directors working on multiple projects. So you want to be on their radar, so that you're kind of like their go-to person to keep calling in. And if you do a great job, no matter whether you get the job or not, you're going to book. They're going to be calling you back in, and that in itself is a major success as a working actor. And it's not about booking a job. When working actor studio, we talk a lot about the booking ratio. A very good booking ratio for an actor is 1 out of every 20 auditions that you go on, 5%. So if you say, every 20 auditions, if you book 1 of them, you're doing amazing.
Wow.
So, and that should be a goal. Like, just look at, okay, even if, like, let's say, okay, you go on 5 auditions, you book that. Now reset the clock, say, okay, the next 20, one of the auditions in the next 20, I'm going to book, get the job. And when you start going with that framework, so it's all about, really doing your best and getting out of your head.
And Dr. Albert, you and Dr. Will mentioned about the 5 people, surrounding yourself with success. And if you don't have those people in your life yet because you're new to acting, Caroline had that fun technique of, your dear friend, imagining, kind of like the circle of excellence, but with people, your dear friend, Sigourney Weaver, your dear friend. Oh, there.
Yeah, buddy board.
Yes, yeah, your buddy board. Yes, Caroline brought up the creation of buddy board that she uses in NLP and hypnosis for those experts. And Dr. Will has his buddy board. Yeah,
Oh, there.
Dear friend. Dear friend.
I always forget this guy's name, but he's like, you see him on all these TV shows and movies.
He's your dear friend.
My dear friend. That's the guy I'm modeling the most. And I always forget this guy's name, but he always plays military officers.
Yeah.
So that's the buddy board. And then up here's my NLP world.
Right. And the buddy board is not something you just look at for inspiration. Although, I do that with my buddy board. but also Caroline, and I'm jumping in for Caroline. I'm so sorry, Caroline. You know, Caroline taught us, and so did Dr. Will and Dr. Albert, that we imagine that, and being actors and actresses, this, you know, would be easy for you to imagine that they are actually your friends. You're feeling maybe a certain way or certain down, you know, down. What are they saying to you to elevate you? What is Hugh Jackman, dear friend, saying to you? You know, Zagarnic would have some empowering things for me. And, you know, Hugh Jackman would have like, get out there, do it again, you know, and do your voice practices. What advice would these dear friends give you, your buddies in the field?
Yeah. And you know, for those of you that just on the call that are actors, you know, even just your brain doesn't really differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. So, you know, the more that you put yourself in the state of imagining what they would say, the more real it's going to become. And you will start to believe that and start inhabiting that. So, yeah, put yourself, you know, you know, even in your imagination, in your head, you know, of associating yourself with working actors. And also, you know, for those of you in communities, you know, start going to different acting, you know, community acting classes. And, you know, maybe you need to change up your acting class so that, you know, if you feel that it's kind of stale, you know, or if you feel that, you know, the level of actors aren't really working, get into a community with working actors.
Well, and what's cool, there's a video of and he's an actor with Chris Platt, I think. Yeah, Chris Platt. When he was on what was that, Parks and Recreation, right? I'm not a big, he's an okay actor. I'll just say what I think, but I like him. But when he was on Parks and Recreation, he was like they had him gain like 60 pounds because he was the chubby, funny guy in the show. And he made a video that he goes, within 5 or 6 years, I'm going to be the lead in a Marvel action movie. And he posted it on YouTube, and people made fun of him, but it was like what he was creating in his mind, right? And then when he got cast in whatever it was, Guardians of the Galaxy, people were like, Chris Platt, the fat guy from Parks and Recreation, right? And then we see him, you know, a year later when he's pretty goddamn buff when he did the part. But yeah, that's that could talk about that, Albert, about the creative, where do you want your career to go?
Well, there's a whole lot of limitations. And I think that, you know, you are powerful creators, and, you know, actors, it's not uncommon for them to, you know, gain 70, 80 pounds for a role and then drop that immediately after, you know, by working out heavily. You know, so I think that part of, like, you know, going with that deep trance identification, identifying with the character and really creating that, you know, because it's more than just, you know, as an actor reciting lines. It's really about embodying character and developing a walk, you know, a physicality, you know, and really there's so many slight nuances that it's just, you know, a lot of people, and this is what, you know, actors, and I'm sure actors on the call can say here, there's much more to just being an actor than just saying lines, reading lines. This is why a lot of people who want to go into acting, you know, I think don't realize how hard how complex it is. Because the good actors make it look so easy. Because it's all about making the character your own and making those words your own. And so there's a lot of nuances. And like Chris Pratt, you know, he can do that. You know, if he wants to do that, he can. You know, if he wants to be in a Marvel film, you know, it takes, you know, maybe 10, 12 months of intense physical training, and there he is. You know, and I'm sure I could probably guess that he already probably was a buff guy before he took on that role. So, you know, that was very easy for him to get back to. Okay, when the role's over, it's back to that. And most actors who take on superhero roles spend a year or two in training.
And Albert, I want you to talk real quick as we get, like, I don't want to keep everybody, but I can't think of her name. As you're talking, I'll find her name. She was this Broadway actress, and as she got older, she had real bad arthritis, and I'm not making fun of, in her hands that you get, right? And she would step on stage, she would get into character, and once the play would start, you'd literally see her hands do, and she would be through the whole show moving, da, 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 da. And as soon as after the final bow, it went back, right? And that means just talk about that's just, yeah, like
you know, the power of the how much control we have over our bodies, and just by identifying. So, even if you spend like 5 minutes, I'm sure like in her hand, just like, doing self-talk or self-hypnosis even, I don't have arthritis, so my hands are my hands are fine. My hands are feeling great. And then for 1 or 2 hours that she's on stage, she's able to do that. So, but the one thing that we found, especially why I'm always amazed every day, as in my background in hypnosis and NLP, the power of the mind. When it comes to whether temporary or even spontaneous healing like that. So, this is why I think being in such a positive state is important, or happy state or healthy state is extremely important for an actor. So.
Well, and all of us on the call, the hypnotists, helpers, and actors and actresses, the thing that why you want to get a good teacher. And I'm not going to do the good teacher thing, but because and it may change as it goes on. My people were on my book thing. My voice teacher come on. Took me 25 years to finally start working with a voice teacher that now I have a full 4-octave range if I want it, right? And I can. And if you'd have told me that like a few years ago, I'd have slapped you, because, like I said, I was the guy in the musical that they'd say, just stand in the corner, you can dance, and then you do the funny bits. But yeah, so I finally found the right teacher, and that, Albert, just from like finding the right teacher, the right agent, the right group of people. So as we get ready to wrap it up, share about that why you worked with Working Actors Studio.
Yeah, you want to find it as an actor, the tribe that works for you. Like, for example, certain acting teachers may work for your acting friends and colleagues, but may not be the best fit for you. Same thing with agents and managers. Like, let's say you have representation, your friends may love that, agent manager, but it may not be a good fit for you. So you have to find your voice and your own tribe that fits for you, that works for you. So who do you feel the most comfortable? Even when you go to headshot photography, going for headshots, it's important that you feel a connection or comfort with your photographer. Not just because they're the best photographer in town. It may not be for you. So the important thing is to really find what works for you the best. You can get recommendations, yes, and it's good to get that. But at the same time, you want to know what works for you. I teach at Working Actors Studio, and we have a strong, consistent family group of actors that come every week. And then we have some that come one time and don't, and for them, it's not for, they'll say, this is not for me. It's a good place, but it's not for me. Okay. I respect that, and that's important. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Don't go just because you have, just because that particular studio, because otherwise you're going to be unhappy, and there's nothing more, I think, preventing than being an unhappy actor.
Cool. And the last question for you, I promise, is if you talk a little bit about, in the last, 9 months now, 8-9 months, I've lost track because we're in day 50, the day 185 of the 15 days to flatten the curve. But how everything has changed, because now we're doing everything like this on Zoom.
Yeah.
Even acting classes, they're doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, well, that's different too. I mean, auditions are virtual. Acting classes are virtual over Zoom. now there's even plays over Zoom, like theater plays, readings. So, and it's, it's all about learning to adapt. I mean, a lot of times, especially I think sometimes the older actors have a hard time adapting to newer technologies and newer things. But the important thing is, you have to be able to adapt. No, that was funny. You have to be able to adapt, and that means adapting to the new technology, the new format. So everything that was going to be virtual. So getting trained in Zoom, knowing the proper frames, knowing the proper lighting to send in auditions. That's important now. Whereas maybe a year ago, you didn't have to worry about that so much. So,
Yeah.
so being
Dr. Albert, do you have a Facebook page or a group page that people can pop into and check you out and check everything out?
Yeah, well, I have my personal, which is Albert Vermonte. You can just find me there. I also have a general Facebook page for the agency, a fan page, Emerging Talent Agency.
Oh,
And and then for my agency itself, like for the actors that I work with, I have a private Facebook group, the Emerging Talent Family, and that's for clients for me easily able to communicate, things easily and with them. But I think just even personally, I mean, I post a lot of things on a weekly basis. Sometimes I'll go live, on my Facebook page. So,
thank you.
All
right.
right. All right, everyone. That was fun. Thank you,
was
Mr. Al. Everybody, Albert, yay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great job, Albert. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
A
Pam.
lot of helpful advice.
Yeah.
Can I just share something, Will?
Sure.
With Albert, you made so many important points for the actors on the call. It's so important what you mentioned about the cognitive dissonance and them fully associating and resonating with being a successful paid professional actor. That is so important that they not only think of themselves, but that they fully resonate and step into the body of being a fully successful professional actor. I also love your reframe. I used to be in sales, my first career, and what you were saying about the failure, there is no failure. You're just not needed today. Well, I love that. I really love so many of the tips that you gave, and even the EFT. That is such a helpful tool too. And Michelle and Carol, you gave some wonderful tips too, and Will. And I just really loved so many of the points that you made. I haven't been an actor, but I was a performer. I used to sing with a rock band and an oldies band. And getting up on the stage and having to perform, a lot of the tips that you shared also would apply for both, any kind of a performer, but also when I was back in sales, because every day I encountered rejection. I used to sell advertising, and every day you're knocking on doors. I was on the road and dealing with rejection. And so many of the things you said are applicable for across the board and would have been helpful for me back then
Yeah.
when I was in sales. So thank you so much. You are a brilliant soul and a sweet soul. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That was
All right,
Thank you,
everyone.
Albert. That was great.
Cool.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Albert. Thank you, Dr.
thank
Will.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think next week we're going to do a thing on leadership,
Cool.
right? What we can learn on how to build a team, how to build a team. So that could be fun. All right.
All
Well,
right.
everyone. Thank you, Albert, again. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Grudge